Go on now to the next mimer of the Rebbe. We learned the first two mamorim, Basi Legani and Yesheves Baganim, which is a Hamshich to Basi Legani. The next mimer the Rebbe said was actually 2 weeks later, Shabbos Mevorchim Adar Rishon, Parshas Mishpatim. It's a very interesting mimer, and in a certain sense, perhaps it continues on in the theme of the other two mamorim. The Rebbe starts off the mimer with a question which is asked in many mamorim of Chassidus, that the pasuk starts the parsha with Ve'ela המשפטים אשר תשים לפניהם. These are the laws that you should put before them, and continues to say Ki sikne eved ivri, if you shall acquire a Jewish slave. The question that Chassidus asks is, here we're saying about Moshe Rabbeinu, Tasim Lifneihem, you, Moshe, should put these laws before them, the Jewish people, them in third person in plural, because we're talking about the Jewish people. And then it says, Kisikne, if you will acquire, you is in talking, you is speaking in second person and in singular form. And what Chassidus explains is that the kisikne, if you will acquire, doesn't relate to the Jews. It's not this is what you should tell them if you shall acquire. But rather, kisikne is a continuation that Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu. You, Moshe, will acquire an Eved Ivri. So to understand this idea, it also is connected, although the Rebbe doesn't bring this directly in the Maimer, which is explained in Chassidus, Tasim Lifneim means you shall put before them, meaning also Lipnimiusam. Take the Torah and make the Torah be internalized by the Jewish people. That's the job and the mission of Moshe Rabbeinu. The Torah, as we learnt in Parshas Yisro, Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people, but Hashem is up in heaven and we're down here on earth, similar to the issue that we dealt with in the last Maimer by Yesheves Baganim. Hashem is there in the spiritual world. We are down here in a world where the reality is the physical world. We know that there's a story that Rebbe very often tells over in the name of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev. The Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev turned to Hashem and said, what's the big deal, Hashem, that you put the Jewish people in a world where in front of their eyes is the desires of this world and all the physical desires, and then you take a book, Reishis Chachma, and in it you write about Gan Eden and Gehenim and Holocaust, etc. Why don't you try put a person in a world and in front of his eyes, make the reality of his life be godliness, Gan Eden, Gehenim, and then take a book, the Reishis Chachma, and write there about all the physical pleasures of the world. Let's see who's going to do Avedas then. In other words, Hashem put us in a world where the reality is not godliness. The reality is the physical world, and that's in fact what Hashem wanted, as we learned in the last two Mamorim. We are supposed to and meant to be in a physical world. That's the whole point of it. The problem is, how then are we supposed to connect to Hashem? And that's why, when Hashem came to give the Jewish people the Torah, they said, Daber ata iponu v'nishma, val yidaber iton manu elikim ben namus. You speak to us, Moshe. We can't hear it directly from Hashem because we are in a physical existence, and hearing it directly from Hashem will cause our souls to leave our body. We're meant to be contained in the physical world. How then can we connect to the spirituality? This is why there is the Anoichi Oimed Bein Hashem Uveinechem Lahagid Lochem Ezvar Hashem, the Anoichi, which is Moshe Rabbeinu. He is the intermediary, the Memutza HaMechaber between the Eibishter, between Hashem and the Jewish people, and he draws down Dvar Hashem, Elokus, to us so that we can also connect to it. Because Moshe Rabbeinu is the ultimate spiritual of spiritual. On one hand, he's totally connected to Hashem. At the same time, he's part of us. Moshe Rabbeinu is the one who's the reality of what every Jew is, and therefore he can bring down godliness to us. And that's what the meaning of Tasim Lifneim. Tasim Lifneim Lipnimiyusam. Take Torah, which is something which is not internal, something which is not there in the Jewish people as a reality, and bring it down, make it real, make it become part of us. Because Moshe Rabbeinu is not just another person who happens to be a great man. Moshe Rabbeinu is the one who's the Neshama Klalis, who every single one of us is part of him. Each one of us has a Moshe Rabbeinu inside us. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu has the ability to reveal in us that which we really are. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu is called the Raya Mehemna, the faithful shepherd, or the shepherd of faith. He takes faith, the belief, the connection to the spiritual worlds, which is what we are all about, and he brings it into us and makes it become part of us. He shepherds us with that faith, the Raya Mehemna. Now let's get back to what the Parsha says, Kisikne Eved Ivri. Kisikne Eved Ivri means, Tikne doesn't just mean if you will acquire, but Tikne means if you will cause to acquire. Eved Ivri, you take an Ivri, a Jew, who his neshama is from Eiver Anar, as we'll explain later. The essence of a person who's down here in this world, but yet the reality that he comes from is Ivri, from a different side. Take that different side, take that Ivri, and Sikne Eved, make him acquire, so that he should become an Eved, a servant of Hashem. What do you cause him to acquire? And that's what Chassidus explains, that Moshe Rabbeinu causes the neshamas of Yidden to acquire das, to acquire knowledge of godliness. That's the idea that Chassidus explains. Now the Rebbe continues to explain, what does this mean? So it says in the Pasuk, V'zorati es Beis Yisrael zera Adam v'zera Behema. There's two types of neshamas. There are those neshamas which are called Zera Adam, the human fodder, the human seed. That is the neshamas which are the neshamas of Atzilus, that even in previous generations there were very few of them. Because that's not what we are, that's not what we're about, that's not what we're meant to do. There are some who their mission is to bring something special into the world for the rest of us. But the average and the most regular of what we are, especially in our generation, in the later generations, is Zera Behema. Zera Adam is the neshamas of Atzilus. They have das, that's why they're called Adam. What's the difference between a person and an animal? Not chachma, not bina, not understanding and wisdom, because you can have an animal that could be very wise. The difference between a person and an animal is das, the connection, making it real. And that's why we say that the neshamas of Atzilus, which are neshamas of Ma, which Ma is gematria Adam, are Zera Adam. In them they have das. Those are the neshamas of the world of Atzilus, where Elokus is reality. Atzilus, we learned it in the last two Mamarim, is Giloy HaHelam. It's revealing that which is hidden in Elokus. Atzilus is the godly world, the world where the reality is Elokus. That's neshamas of Atzilus, which even in previous generations, there weren't that many of them, because that's not what the point is, that's not what the goal and the mission is. Most of the neshamas in our generation are Zera Behema. They're like animals. An animal doesn't see anything outside of itself. An animal only feels its own existence. That's what our neshamas are. Those who don't feel the existence and the true reality of Elokus. And what's our job, our mission? As the Rebbe mentioned, various occasions, if you look on the American dollar, it says et pluribus unum. The Latin words which mean from many one. That's our mission. Our mission is to be in a world of many, a world of diversity, a world where our reality as behemoths is that we see ourselves, we feel ourselves, our existence when we wake up in the morning is not to think about Maidani, not to think about davening, not even to think about helping another Jew. The moment we wake up in the morning, we think about our coffee, we think about turning around and going back to sleep, because that's our nature, we're animals. We think about our own existence. That's because we're lacking das. But yet, we have a mission. What's our mission? To yes, be involved in that world of the many, and to transform it into one. But how do we do that if we don't have das? And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu comes and brings das into our neshamas, into the neshamas of Zera Behema. Now the question is, what is das? So we're lacking das. What is das, and why is it such an important thing? So if we look in what Chassidus explains that there's three moichin. There's three levels of intellect which they actually control everything about us. Chachma, Bina, and Das. Chachma is the nekudas haskala. Chachma is the point of everything, as we've learned at length in the past two Mamarim. Chachma is the point. Chachma is the idea. It's still the potential. Koyachma. When Bina takes over, Bina means to understand it, to think about it. Chachma, being that our reality, one of the differences between a human and an animal is that an animal is about emotions. An animal's entire life, entire existence is around his emotions. He doesn't have the idea of something outside of him, meaning intellect. Emotions is what I feel, what I want. Most of us are also controlled by our emotions, but the fact is we are humans, which means we have an intellectual capacity, intellectual capabilities. What is intellect? Intellect is understanding something which is outside of me. Emotions is feeling me. Intellect is understanding something which is outside of me. And Chassidus, the Alter Rebbe, explains to us that the nature of a human being, the way he was created by Hashem, is that the mind rules over the heart, which means that the intellect actually can control the emotions. I'm not limited. I'm not confined to be in the emotions that are natural to me, but I can actually control those emotions through intellect, which is something outside of me. So the intellect is my understanding and my appreciation of godliness of something that's outside of me. Starts with Chachma. Chachma is that idea, the idea which is above me, the idea which is outside of me, whether I read it in a sefer, whether I heard it from someone, whether it came to me in my mind, but it's something from above me. Bina is when I take it in, when I make it become part of me, when I understand it. Bina is when I contemplate it. When Bina takes over, then I actually understand it. And once that happens, I have now the father and mother, Chachma and Bina, the idea and the understanding of it, which is able to give birth to Ava and Yira, love and its branches, fear and its branches. Yet, says the Alter Rebbe, without das, it's nothing. Without das, the entire Chachma and Bina are not real. Yes, I will feel inspired, I'll feel excited, but it didn't become part of me. Why? Because das is connecting to it and making it become part of me. It's not just something I understand. It's not just something I realize and recognize, but this is the reality of me. And this is now the difference between Atzilus and Biyah. In the neshamas of Biyah, they learn something, they understand something, we know that this is the truth, we understand that this is the truth, we contemplate the idea, and we realize we're convinced that this is real and true, but it doesn't become the reality, it's not the reality, it's not what it is. That's why Atzilus comes and says, not only I know that this is the way it is, not only I understand that this is the way it is, but this is the reality, this is it, and this is das. We'll stop here, continue with Shem tomorrow.